It's YNK, so since I stole all of Thorin's gigs, at the very least, what you guys can do is subscribe to his YouTube channel, so go on and do it right now.
This is another episode of Talk to Thorin, and I'm here with Kassad, currently the coach of Valiance, but he's obviously been the coach of a number of other teams. And I wanted to talk to him about coaching, about some of the things that have changed over the years. So one thing I wanted to start with is touch a little bit on some of your playing career, because as people may know, one of the factors, I will say it's a bit harsh because no one really knows your playing career in isolation. But if I tell people you played with Janko, they're like, all right, yeah, I vaguely know Janko played. No one really does. It's just that because he's super smart now, everyone assumes he must have been good. But they weren't a good team. But anyway, and then the key third detail obviously is you guys played with NiKo, who obviously is a fucking amazing player now, super duper insane, etc. Right? Whenever Janko tells the story of when he played, right? On the one hand, he makes it sound like, you guys never really thought you were going to make it to the top or whatever. It was just kind of cool to go to the lands and nice to be able to practice and maybe dream of making it one day, which is obviously going to be interesting because it kind of ties into where Valiance is at now, the kind of things that you guys are trying to accomplish. Were you actually someone who was going hard? Because I've noticed in the end of all the Janko stories, he always mentions, he kind of throws everyone else under the bus. When I realized they weren't going to, fully put in all the hours and be totally dedicated, I thought, maybe I'll move on to this observing stuff. Were you going full on as a pro?
Yeah, definitely. I knew it immediately since the CSGO started that it's going to be big, and I want to be a part of that in any way I can. So we started playing back in, when was it, 2013 or something?
Yeah, really early.
Yeah, really, really early. And we made that team. It was I don't know, me and Janko actually gathered up the whole squad, right? NiKo was there and two other players, Sammy, who is now still playing in Valiance, and KGR, who is playing in Serbian team. But we started that. It was really fun, right? And we practiced. I remember we practiced a lot. I remember back then his day was like this. He gets up at 6 a.m. He goes to school. He comes back at 2 p.m., right? He goes to lunch, maybe rest for an hour, and then we practice from 4 till 10 or 11, and then we talk for an hour, and then he goes to sleep, go to school, and that was his everyday.
Okay.
That was his everyday.
It's pretty full on.
Yeah. And me and Janko were exactly like that. Just we didn't go to school back then. It was different, but yeah, we went full on, three of us, and I don't know. It was fun. It was fun, and then it turned to being serious, and then the problem started, and whatever.
When you were a player, so obviously people know. It fits with his persona that Janko was the in-game leader. Right? Since you've gone on to become a coach, and you've even been in teams where. Back in 2016, it was possible briefly for the coach to even be the in-game leader. He could help call, etc. What type of player were you? Were you actually a player who was trying to do strats and be some kind of a caller?
Since the start of my career, right back in 2001, I say, or 2000. I don't know when I started. It's something like that. But I was always the guy who was gathering up the players, who was the in-game leader, who was getting the strats done, everything. I felt comfortable in that position, and it just carried on into forever. So yeah.
Okay. So before we get to the period people will know, mousesports and the Renegades, etc., I saw there was a detail which reminded me, someone had mentioned this piece of trivia to me. So whenever anyone talks in the history of the majors in CSGO about the development of when they made the offline qualifier, and they made this actually what's now the minor circuit, where you have to any team in theory can qualify, but you've got to go through your region, and you've got to go through these qualifiers. One of the reasons why I always praise that system is because in the early days, before we had proper LAN qualifiers, they actually tried doing stuff at this one major. It was the third major. It was ESL 1 Cologne 2014, the one that NIP won, everyone will remember. They actually just directly invited a team from India, which was kind of a bit weird. It wasn't even a qualifier thing. It was they just invited a team from India, and they tried to use the logic that now we have for why we have minors, etc., which is let's see if there's some talent out there. But obviously that's a bit of a flawed concept to just invite a team randomly, because they're not going to do anything. And obviously they didn't at this major because, let's face it, they never played any of the teams before. The players aren't practicing top level. And so the team was called Team Wolf. And apparently you actually coached the team at the event. So how did that come about? How did you end up coaching a team from India?
Wow. That's a funny story. But it happened I don't know what the date was or something. I remember it was Thursday. And I got the message from Peter from HLTV, and he's like, the guys from India are interested in getting a coach. I recommended you, whatever. And then I started talking to them. all of a sudden they asked me like, okay, can you come Tuesday? It's like, I'm in Serbia, right? It's Thursday, I'm in Serbia, it's, you know. So I said like, yeah, whatever, I will go. And there was like whole drama about getting visa and whatever. It's just like everything was happening so fast, right? So I went there and it was Tuesday, I think, yeah. And it was like, it was so funny, man. The level of CS there was like super, like, I don't want to say low. It's in a lack of a better word, but it was interesting. I mean, the guys, the people there, they're amazing. You know, they're super friendly. They're like, they accepted me very well, like, and they listened to me. But the conditions there were like, and the development, the whole scene was like ridiculous. You know.
Oh, did you actually go to India to help them?
Yeah, I was
right,
in Mumbai. I was in Mumbai. I flew there. Like, it was like I was flying all alone. It was super weird for me, like on the other end of the world, right? And I'm landing in Mumbai in India. I don't know where the fuck am I, right? So I go there and they welcome me and everything. So we started practicing in this in this internet cafe, which is like a wooden shed or something. You know? It was like so weird. They all brought their monitors, right, and the PCs and everything. Like, it was like so weird. They didn't know much about CS, but they were trying so hard. They wanted to practice. The practice like community and everything there was like super low. They didn't have any practice groups. You were finding scrims like on Steam, right? And then the people are playing till like round 16 and they just leave. So it was like super hard to develop and practice that way. But we kind of did the best we could, and we were there for a week. Then when we moved to Cologne for another week for the majors. I mean, we didn't do much, but I mean, we just worked on the basics and just went there and played, I guess.
Okay. And was that your first actual experience like doing any kind of coaching?
No. Actually, everything started from Star Ladder Season 9 finals. It was us, Astana Dragons, the new Virtus Pro, and it was Navi back then.
Ah, right. Yes.
Yeah, it was season 9. That was a funny story too.
I think it was 8, but it was the one right where I think it was like actually...
Again, the Polish team was again, and they won
just
that.
Before they became that squad.
They just got Snacks and Bialy back then, and they were like super strong. I mean, they won the Katowice
right after,
they won that. So they were like, so they won even that event as well. So there was a funny story about that event as well. So we were like, there was an online part of the league, if you remember, like I don't know, 12 teams we were playing there. And we were like 6th or 7th, and the top 4 are going to the LAN finals, right? And then the 4th team couldn't go, and then the 5th team couldn't go, and the 6th team couldn't go.
Right.
And they invited us, so we're like, yeah, sure. But the problem was like this: we needed like 1.6k euros to get there because not everything was paid for, and you know, like it's the beginning of CS:GO, and like there wasn't so much money in it. I remember the prize pool for like 4th place was like 2k. You know, it was. It was interesting. So we didn't have any money. So, and there was like 24 hours notice, right? So either we go or we don't go. So I had to borrow the money, like 1,000 from the guy who is the owner of this internet cafe called GamePub, right? We were representing them, but he didn't actually give us the money. He borrowed us the money, and we were supposed to give it back once we win the prize pool, right? Right? And there was like 600 euros missing. So a good friend of ours from Cooler Master helped us, and she was like, yeah, she really saved us there. And we got the money. We kind of split it between each other and just went there, you know, and we played really good CS. I remember NiKo was a beast there. And I think we beat the Standard Dragons there, the newly formed team, if you remember. And then we had 2 really, really close games against again and Navi, and we finished the third place. So it was like my first coaching experience there back there. I didn't even have the headsets. I was just calling strats in my in-game leader's ear, and it was like, you know, it was all weird, but it was fun, and it was the actual start of my coaching, in a way.
Okay.
I think I was the first guy in CS:GO who was like a coach in the team. I don't remember anybody else doing it back then.
So one of the other things as well is people know that obviously Janko became an observer and then became an analyst, etc. So some people don't realize that like it's not like his team just disappeared after that. You were still playing for a couple of years after he kind of like packed it in, right? So was it still just like semi-pro? Did you guys ever actually think you could go higher?
The thing the thing that happened after that event is where we made a mistake, one critical mistake, because after that we kicked one of our players, Letny, and we brought in Janko as a player. And it wasn't a mistake bringing Janko in, we just kicked the wrong player.
Right.
We didn't remove, because I mean, the level of our understanding of the game was like not so high back then, because everything was developing. We didn't understand particularly the roles, like what we needed, so we kicked the wrong guy, And we brought in Janko. We started playing, and I remember we were playing this is where all fell apart, I think. We played the major qualifier, and we lost 16-14 to team that was Rain was playing for. They called Party Astronauts or something. And then the Norwegian team, and Rain was playing, and then he dropped like 40 kills, and NiKo dropped like 35. It was like a battle between those two,
Duel.
Yeah, it was super crazy, and we lost that, and the problem started. So we decided to like kind of disband in a way, and we tried getting another like lineup together, but we couldn't make it work because one or two players wouldn't join us. They didn't believe in the whole project or whatever, and NiKo ended up in a mousesports back then. So they just got him, and that's where he started when he started playing in mousesports.
Okay, so since mousesports was like the first proper coaching gig, when like it's like an actual job, and this is a big name team, obviously a top 10 team at the time, because with NiKo they'd like gradually sort of gotten to that level. Since you had the connection with NiKo, was that how you got the gig?
Yeah, actually, I don't know. To this day, I don't know. I know NiKo called me, and he asked me to be their coach and everything, but also their manager talked to me as well. So it was like, I don't know who made that decision, but I know I just got it. But that was like a super weird period, man. That in mousesports, it was like super weird in a way. I don't know.
Since you were playing with NiKo when he was like 16, 15, I mean, I think that some people have heard this story that Janko has, where when he first came to the lands, he was like sitting on a fucking encyclopedia or something, so he could like see the screen or something. Some mad story like that, because he was so small,
Yeah.
What was he actually like as a young player when he's like this guy coming up?
He was just a guy who wants to get kills. He was just fragging everybody. And he was just like, just give me a gun and I'm just going to kill everybody. He was like that. So he was like making mistakes, re-peeking, just overextending, just like the usual kid stuff, right? But he was developing really, really fast. And it was like the work ethics that he had, the commitment that he had was amazing. Like this is the reason why he's like this today. Like he's one of probably the best player in the world, just because he was like developing really fast in the right way. His mind was like always in the right place, and he was just always wanted to get more and more and more. And he paid his dues, I guess.
And did he already have like crazy aim, etc.? Yeah,
he had crazy aim back in 1.6 because we played together in 1.6, like regional tournaments. I remember we played DreamHack, one of the last DreamHack in Bucharest, where I don't know who won that. I think it was like a
Fnatic.
Yeah, I think it was a Danish team who won that.
Yeah, it was Fnatic, but they were just Danish. They had Carrigan and Trace.
Trace, yeah, exactly. And we were there like on events like that, regional big events. But he was playing insanely good back then in 1.6. But that was the end of the 1.6, and you couldn't really get noticed back then, right? So, but he was really good.
So as you say, this was, I mean, I know this is one of the things from the outside that people don't appreciate, okay, which is that when NiKo was in this mousesports team, so most people know the storyline that because he was like legit dropping like 30 every game, it felt like, but the team was clearly a very flawed team. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I used to get so triggered where, now that we've got this new mousesports that's like really good, when people used to be like, mouse improved as well when NiKo left. It's like, there's like one player from the team left. Like, this, believe me, if Dennis and Spiddy were there doing really well, I'd give it up. I'd say fair play, but it's like, it's not the same squad. So one of the reasons why I always got mad is not only was NiKo having to like be amazing for them to have any chance to win, but there were all these elements within the team that if you knew a little bit about it, like for example, the fact that NiKo had to be the in-game leader, and then the fact that when he's the in-game leader, he can't just be like shocks or something and be like, right, well, I'm just going to go over this side of the map and kill everyone, and you guys do that like as a star player would, He has to do something within the strat itself that includes him, but still he has a chance to get killed. It's like a very difficult scenario, and then you've got that situation where at the time, mousesports, back then at least, wasn't a team with a lot of money, so you couldn't just go and buy the best players and say, right, we'll get this guys, So it's a very difficult situation for everyone. When you came into this team, you came in right around the time where it seemed like he was starting to get kind of frustrated. Because if you remember, when he first joined the team, because he'd been like a sub and he'd never been in like a top team, it seemed like at first, you know, he was fine with the fact that like, yeah, he's going ham and they're not winning. Because, you know, it's like you got your chance to play at the top tier. But by the time you joined was where he'd already had a few months where it was like, you know, he has an amazing performance, but they still go out in the group stage or they have no chance to go deep in the tournament or something. What was it? What was kind of like his mental state when you joined the team? Was he frustrated? Did he have?
Yeah.
Was it a tough situation?
Yeah, I mean, he was frustrated because he felt he was like had to do too much, you know, in a way. And that team was like, when I joined there in, I guess it was May of 2016 or something like that. It was right before the major qualifier. When I joined, it was like super weird because the team was like in full speed. In a way, you know, they were preparing for the major qualifier, which was super important. Eleague season 1 was coming, like stuff like that, you know, super important. And everybody knew back then that Oscar was coming to the team.
Yes, he'd already like agreed the contract many months before he came, right?
Yeah, but nobody knew who was getting kicked.
Right. So
the tension was always there, you know. Are we gonna play the major good? Are we gonna become legends? And then I'm gonna get kicked, you know. Well, it was weird in a way, you know, and I don't know. He surely felt frustrated because of everything that was happening, and then the major came, and then we lost to Liquid in that decider, and then all hell break loose, you know. So we changed players. We brought new players. It was like a player break there, and we had a good run in E-League season 1, but it was like it wasn't good. You can say it like that. It didn't feel the way it's supposed to feel, you know.
Give us some sense then for people who are just outsiders. Like I kind of hinted a little bit at it. Like what was NiKo's role in mousesports at the time, you know? Because for people who don't know, like I say, he wasn't just like, you know, just frag everyone. Like, he was the in-game leader as well. So how did he, like he's not someone you'd think of naturally as like, this guy should be an in-game leader, you know? He kind of took the role because he had to, right? So what did he do? What was his job? Like, did he really have to sort of like, I mean, it sounds harsh to say, but sort of like micro some of the other players around the map as to like what they're doing?
Yeah, it was like that, but they accepted the way they were. They're not Speedy, Dennis, Nex. I mean, we see Nex playing decent today in big.
Sure.
All other players, they're decent players. Dennis took up the role of entry fragger, and he was doing it. He was doing the role really good. He wasn't complaining about it. He was doing what he was being told to do, and like he was playing solid. But I don't know. NiKo felt like he had to do it more, and I think they got to him a bit. And I watched one of your videos before when you talked to Carrigan. He was talking about NiKo and his like understanding of the game, and he has a really, really high understanding on his awareness on the map is like super good, and he can take on the role of in-game leader if he wants to.
Okay.
And even today, if he wants to, he can take it on, but they don't need it right now. So.
Okay, so in this squad, you alluded to one of the players there who was an obvious kind of like problem player, which was Nex. Because, like, just as an outsider, if you saw Nex when he played under God B the year before, there was times he was looking amazing and everyone was like, wow, this is going to be like the new German talent. Like, let's see how far he can go. This is before NiKo was in the squad, obviously. So he was like the main star player of the team. And then in the period when NiKo was the in-game leader was when... It's like, I always used to say it like this. When they went to the smaller tournaments, they'd do fine. But it's like every time you were looking for the big match, yeah, NiKo would have a great game. You know, maybe Chris J, he's kind of up and down. But it's like Nex would always just disappear. It's like he would just, suddenly he wouldn't be this really good player. Yeah. Now, I know you were someone where, I think maybe I had a conversation with you about this when you just became the coach of Mouse. You said something like, in practice, it wasn't like this, right?
Yeah, it wasn't. He had, on practice, he's just destroying people. That the aim that he has is like super good, and he's playing. I don't know, in tournament environment, he's the kind of player that he likes to have like everything in order, like around him. Nothing has to like disturb him in a way. And if he has everything going on for him in that aspect, he's gonna play good. But if something is kind of upsetting him or outside of the game, in the game or anything, he can become inconsistent in a way. So I think that was his like issue back then. I don't know about now.
So one thing that people always made kind of a big deal about is when you went to E-League Season 1. Since E-League Season 1, one of the things about being in a studio is they can get every camera angle and they can get all the like things that people say. There's the famous moment where NiKo like told Christian, I'm like, shut up! And the problem is, like, even though, by the way, if you listen to all the audio of every team playing, you'd be surprised at some of the players you might hear say something like that. A lot of people thought that it was like, because it was tied into the storyline of like, you know, NiKo was frustrated because he was so amazing. People think that like, there was like bad like team spirit in the squad or something, or maybe certain players got too frustrated. What would you say to that topic?
No, I mean, that was totally harmless what happened there. People don't know, but the thing was like we played the round, right? And the round ended, and then I think Christian and Dennis were talking about the previous round, just like something. I don't know. It wasn't even an argument. It was just a discussion about something that happened in the round. Whatever. Missed flash or something. Missed timing, whatever. And NiKo was trying to say what are we going to do the next round. And then he was saying it, and then these two were talking, right? And then he was saying it again, and he was like, shut up, shut up. It was totally like, it wasn't really hostile or anything like that. It was just like a, you know, casual thing, I guess.
Right, this might sound weird, but I've actually seen a phenomenon a bit like what happened with NiKo in that team, where one player's doing amazing, and then the rest are like, not as good. And it's mainly if you look at sports like basketball, like say you have like a really good player who plays on a bad team, obviously he can still get his shots, he can still score, you know. It's not like League of Legends where the whole team's like capped because someone's not doing well, you know. The individual player can still get his, but the problem I've noticed is in a way it feels like it can actually crush the confidence of the bad teammates even more, because then they're sort of like seeing that their teammate's doing awesome, and in the back of their mind they must sort of know like, well, if I was doing a bit better, we might win this game. And so when they lose, even if the teammate doesn't say to them, it's your fault, that's kind of in the air, you know, like it's kind of like that's, it's the implication is like, well, it's us who kind of blew the game. Was there any of this in mousesports?
Maybe a little bit when somebody has a really, really bad game. He can blame himself, but not too much because, like I said, we were in full speed. We didn't have any time to like, you know, be sad about something because something else was coming tomorrow, and we had to turn our focus to that because, like, for example, I don't know, we played a bad game against that Russian team in the first round of major qualifier, and we won it still, but we played a bad game. Like I said, people don't have time to feel bad because tomorrow we're playing another game. It's like another tournament, another game, so just wasn't time for stuff like that.
When you were in the team, as I said, this was the era, because obviously it was after the player break, if people remember, that they changed that rule where the coaches couldn't talk anymore. Whereas before that, part of the reason why Valve changed it is some people were just fully in-game leaders. Like famously, I remember Peacemaker was doing it for Team Liquid when they made that major run to the final, etc. You know, there's a few people, obviously Starix is the most famous example, he'd taken over completely like that. Right? In your team, you came in when NiKo was the in-game leader. Were you doing some of that? How did that work? Did you take over at some point?
Yeah, well, that was the idea. But NiKo was in-game leading the most of it. But the idea was for me to take it over at some point, but it didn't really happen because, well, the coaching rule changed. But yeah, that was the general idea, but never really got to it in a way.
Right, so as you referenced, one of the first big tournaments for you after that major was E-League Season 1, where if people remember, you guys had a very weird route because you had to go through that like last chance qualifier first, which was like, if people just go and watch these games, like the game you have against G2, for example, where they had that like stand-in guy or whatever, it's like these games were like you played a million fucking rounds. And like this is where the same tournament where NiKo had that ridiculous Deagle ace against FaZe, if people remember, which is like one of the most ridiculous rounds. So the actual like level of like number of games you had to win just to get into the normal playoffs, and then you managed to go to this top 4, right? What do you think of that run? Because it was the best result that mousesports team actually had. It was top 4, you know, this was a big tournament. It was one of your first as a coach. So was it a big deal for you? Yeah,
it kind of was, but it really wasn't because we were playing such an angry CS there. We were angry that we were like failed on the major, like because it was in Germany and there was a German trio and everything else. The org was German. You know how it goes. And we went there like, and we already made the lineup changes. We just needed to stick together throughout that event. So the idea was that Dennis was benched and next was benched back after the major. So, but we all flew in Atlanta to play the season 1, and we played there wasn't like any like tension or any like bad blood or anything, hostility or something like that. We were just playing angry CS, and NiKo was playing insanely good. So we just ran over Astralis back then, and we just beat FaZe, and who was it, G2, and then we lost to VP again in the semis. So I don't know. Like I said, it was just a super angry CS that we played there, and it just worked for us. And I don't know, we just reached the semis there.
As you say, in the semis was where you met VP, and VP obviously went on to win the tournament. Like, this was like one of their ones where they had like a revival, and they had a few months where they were very good. Being as now, what's sad is I have this like this saying I always repeat, 'cause it's something I once heard as a stat a couple of years ago, which is that once esports got massive, because it gets bigger in terms of like number of fans, you get like a turnover of fans. So like the average age of like the fan that's watching it, they nearly always have only watched the game for like 1 or 2 years. Like, you know, for us, we think CSGO has been going like 6 years, you know, but you have to remember, if they've only been watching 1 or 2 years, that means for a lot of fans, you know, like they never saw like Get Right when he was really good, for example, or they don't actually know what it was like when, like, you know, the old Sox teams, French. So as a result, we're getting to the point now where there will be some fans who never saw Virtus Pro when they were really good. So since this was obviously one of the moments when they were still a very good team, what were the difficulties of playing at Virtus Pro when they were really good?
They were so unpredictable, man. You cannot read them. Like, you cannot anti-strat them. I love doing that stuff, you know. I like analyzing opponents. I like doing, but against them it was impossible because Snax was playing. You know how Snax was playing back then, and Bialy was unbelievably hard to kill on the map. So they were playing such a I don't want to say random CS because they knew what were they doing, but it was like unpredictable for us because they beat us on major as well. So it was really hard to play against them because you don't know what are they going to do. Like against other teams, you can kinda get that game plan going on. You can anti-strat them, you can counter them, whatever. But against Virtus, at that point, it was so hard.
Right. When you were in this mousesports squad, one of the interesting things is that Chris J was still just a player at one point in time. But I remember, I think it was like later on, I think it was just after you left as a coach, that he actually tried being the in-game leader. And then later, obviously, I mean, one part I always mention is, it's not like he did it on his own. He got LMBT, you know, and then they worked together, and then they made this different mouse squad when NiKo left. And that's when people remember Chris J became like a pretty good in-game leader. Now seems like he does his job well. When he was in the team, how did you try to use him in your mousesports team? Because this was when, if people remember, he was one of those players as well who was kind of considered like, people thought like, oh, he's just never going to make it as a top player, you know, because he's very up and down, right?
Yeah, I mean, the problem that he had was like you said, with consistency in a way, but he's a very smart player. And his aim is really, really good with the rifle as well. People just didn't realize because NiKo was in that team and everybody was looking at NiKo, but he was really like a important part of the team in those few months that I was there. And clearly he was the op, so there is only one way you can use him, right? Right? Just give him an op and just yeah. But I don't know. He had a problem as I remember. He tends to get emotional sometimes, you know. But not too much. It was like one of the things. But on the other side, he's like super smart and he understands the game and he's vocal as well. He wants to say what he thinks, and he's an overall really good player. And I like him as a person too because he's he accepted me like, and he respected me like since the moment I got in mousesports.
What were the circumstances of why you left the mousesports team? Like, was it anything to do with that coaching change or anything like that? Why did you leave this team? Because as we said, you just had some pretty good results.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we didn't get the results that we expected, like getting a legend spot on the major and everything that goes with that. But the story was they got an offer from another coach, more popular coach at the time. I don't want to say his name,
okay.
But it was like a vote kind of thing, and they wanted to get him, but at the end they didn't get him. So, and I was like already gone. So that was the story of my ending there.
Okay. Did you feel betrayed then?
No,
they outvoted you?
No, not really. I mean, I felt I wasn't really allowed to do the thing that I wanted to do, and that is why I wasn't feeling betrayed, because like I said, since I joined there, it was like a team in full speed. I never really got the chance to do what I wanted to do, and I'm the person that I am. I'm vocal. I like to do things my own way, and because I know I'm gonna get things done, and I never really got the true chance to do something that I wanted to do in mousesports, and that's why I wanted to go as well at the end of that period.
Okay. So just before you left was when, as you alluded to before, because like behind the scenes, it was actually pretty well known that Oscar had already signed this contract from Hellraisers. In fact, funnily enough, I had this scenario there where like about a month after he signed it, I went to him like, dude, I can get you in a Team Liquid. Like they're ready to sign you. You just have to fly out. He's like, yeah, I've already signed a contract for mousesports. I was like, oh, what the fuck have you done? Like, so anyway, because at the time I thought he was going to prison in that scenario. Like I was like, it's going to be you and NiKo in prison. What are you doing, you idiot? Like, but it's too late. He'd already signed the contract. So when he joined this team, the sad part about this part of the story is, first of all, people now know, after seeing him in mousesports now, he's a really good player. He was able to be like a star player, and do really great things. But when he joined that team, the logic was like, at least NiKo's got someone else who can frag now, At least he's got like, now they'll have a chance in some of these games, And obviously, the bizarre part is, he came in, played that one LAN. It was actually one I was at. It was that Gfinity in the UK. And then he left the team because of some bizarre scenario where there was some sort of like personality conflict behind the scenes. He got benched, and then he came back later, right before NiKo's last LAN, which was the DreamHack Vegas the next year, and then he joined the team properly. Right, even though he was only briefly in the team when you were there, can you give us any sort of insight as to like why did this team not work?
Yeah, I honestly don't know, but I wasn't even on that Gfinity LAN. I was gone. But
it was just after you gone, right?
Yeah. So it was just after. I know when he got in the team, he was super quiet. He didn't say much. I mean, he was playing, but it was like, I don't know, it was like a weird situation. I don't know why they benched him back at the time, because by that time I was already gone. But after that, when I spoke to NiKo back in Vegas and about all that stuff, and he told me like that he was like completely different person, and he was like really good and like whatever, So yeah.
So after this is when you, a few months later, got to join up with Renegades. What was the logic there? Like, why join Renegades? How did you get into that team? Because obviously, I mean, like, sure, you'd been a coach in mousesports, but like, this is another, like, apparently you're just doing a global trip for all your coaching jobs. It must be in Antarctic for the next one, right?
Yeah.
So how did you join this team?
Yeah, it was like I finished my job in mousesports like at the end of the summer or some August, September, and then I was like with my home team, like the same I'm now. And back in December, it was like a mid-December thing. Pita from NIP told me that Renegades are looking for a coach, and then
is this guy your agent or something? It sounds like he's getting you all the gigs.
No. I'm talking about Farok Pita from
NIP.
The other one.
From
NIP.
Okay.
From NIP.
Right, I see. NIP, yes.
NIP, yeah. And then he told me the Renegades are looking for a coach, and then he recommended me. And if any chance they contact me, I should be ready, whatever. So they did contact me back in mid-December, and we made a deal pretty fast, and I was there like beginning of January, and that's where the fun starts,
Okay. So when you came into this team, for people who don't remember, because the thing is nowadays people think of Renegades and think, hey, they've had like a bunch of playoff performances, now like they're good for an upset, they can play some of the top teams close. But back then, Renegades, people have to remember, this isn't like that far gone from when Sponge basically left. Like he hadn't been gone that long from the team. And at the time, one of the reasons he quit is because it was like one of the most kind of underwhelming teams ever, like you'd watch them play and you'd be like, some of these guys have talent, like all of them in their own way can play, but it's like as a unit, it didn't really work. Obviously they needed a few roster moves before it was good. When you first joined Renegades, what was the team actually like? Like what do you think the problems were? What was the kind of lay of the land?
The thing is, when I got there, first of all, I got accepted and respected like immediately when I got there. So that was like really nice, when I got there. But the team, as a team, you can clearly see that some changes needed to happen there. And not because some players are bad or something, the personalities there were totally different, just like super, super different in a way. And the environment they were in, like in the big gaming house, that doesn't work in that kind of environment, that things are just I don't know how to explain it. Just the
You're
personality.
not a fan of living in gaming houses?
Yeah, not not as much. I think that's something that's becoming too old right now, and there are better ways to do things. But we can talk about that later. The thing is, once I got there, I realized that some changes needed to happen. At least like keep the core of Australian players and integrate like your European or North American players into the team, and then create something. That was the idea. And first one to go was Rick, and I mean that needed to happen from both sides in a way. And once he left, that's where the problems started. You know, the darkest period of my time there started right in that period when he left. Not because he was like super important, it's just because we couldn't get a proper player to replace him. And believe me, God knows I tried. First of all, I tried getting NiKo, and he was like in that optic team, and then he was like floating around. And we tried to get him. Looking back at that time, that would probably have been a mistake, because essentially him and Justin, JKS, are playing the same kind of role in a way. So when you look back at that time, probably would have been a mistake, but it didn't work anyway. I don't know the specific reasons why it didn't work, but just it didn't work. We couldn't get him. Then I turned to Europe for a second, and I tried to get Chris J, and he was interested in I talked to mousesports owner, and we talked to Chris J, and he wanted to come, and it was like it's exciting for him. But then NiKo got sold to FaZe, and he got another chance in mousesports, so he stayed there, which turned out to be a really good thing for him. So then I tried getting Sunny, and I even put together the org owners like in a phone call, and they talked, and they couldn't agree on the buyout price, so we couldn't get him. I tried getting Rez, and he was like in school back then, so he was in Epsilon back then, I remember. And the buyout was kind of, I guess, I can't remember all the details, but I think the buyout was kind of too high, so we couldn't get him, and the time was like ticking, you know. And it was like the months, the weeks, you know, it is in passing, and we couldn't really find another player. Meanwhile, Yam left, and one day, like, I mean, he just came to me and said, Alex, I decided I want to go. I don't want to, you know, whatever, play anymore. And he made up several arguments, which was all like reasonable. He's a grown-up person. He's a very mature person, and I think he just got tired of everything and living in NA and all that stuff, and that has been going on, and he just decided to go back, which was fine for me. But that, I mean, nobody was holding in anything against him. It was just it put us in a even worse state, where we need two players, and one of those was an in-game leader and an OPER, and it was like a whole like shit show in a way. And I remember we tried several players like as well, like, but the problem was we couldn't get any of the like already developed players, right? Because they either didn't want to come, the buyout was too high, like stuff like that. And then we couldn't really turn to the youngsters in NA, because the Australian players are kind of specific in that way. They don't really socialize with North American and other players from that region. They just don't, right? And once you do that, you lose the opportunity to kind of attract other players to you, right? Because if you play with Rank S or FPL or whatever, and you hang around like you there, and you just socialize with all these players, you will attract them to your team eventually, right? They will see, this guy is good. Maybe I want to play with him in the future, whatever. But they don't really do that. They don't really socialize that much with other players. So it was hard to like get some communication. And I was new in NA, and I didn't know any players. I didn't know any talents, right? So it was kind of weird. But it was like a super dark period. I remember our practice was like shit, man. We had stand-ins, like ringers. That Ether guy was there. He's a good kid, by the way. So I mean, he helped us a lot through that period. And
was it actually tough, by the way, to convince the Renegades players, like, we can't just get another Australian player, like, you've done this too many times? Because I know when actually they were originally owned, because my friend Monte Cristo from League of Legends owned Renegades in the years before. And when he picked the team up, I actually sold the team to him on the logic of, like, guys, if this doesn't work, like just get NA players. They speak English anyway. I thought it was like the genius move, you know. But what I
It
found
was an
out
obvious move, right?
Yeah, but the problem was every time he tried to say that to the players, like, should we get an NA player? They don't, because like kind of what you're alluded to here, because they hadn't really like integrated themselves into the NA scene. They would always be like, well, we could get this guy from back home in Australia, or like there's a guy on Chiefs we could get, and we were like, no, let's just get an NA player. It's like they were really resistant to it. They thought like, you know, it'll be. Bizarrely, they even tried to cite culture and be like, it'd be too much of a culture clash, you know, like he wouldn't fit in our team. Was it tough to convince them, or were they on board by now?
Yeah, I mean, it was really hard to like get the player they wanted, like, because there was always something. I don't want that guy. Who is that guy? You know, and then one guy is ready to like make to accept somebody, then the other guy was like, no, I don't want to do that. And the morale was like, you know, super low, and the people were just lingering like ghosts around the house, you know. It was like a super difficult period for us, and we had to play Pro League and all these qualifiers, and like the pressure from the org, like, I mean, understandable, because we didn't have any players, didn't get any results, you know. It was like a super difficult time for us, and I decided to improvise. I mean, if I didn't do that, then the team would have died in a way, and that would be it. The team would be dead. I would be the guy who killed it, and that would be the end, right?
Sure.
So we improvised in a way. We got Nexa, and then we got Noah, Nifty. I mean, first we got Nexa, and the problem with Nexa was obvious, right? I put him in a wrong role, like, but that was a thing that I had to do in a way. He got into the role of an in-game leader, and once we boot camped, like, it was fine. We boot camp in Serbia, it was fine. Once we switched over to NA, it was totally different. Once we went to IEM Sydney, where we failed, it was totally different. But the idea of getting Nexa was like, I don't know. I thought we can make it work, and then we got Noah, Nifty, and we barely, like, that was a weird situation as well. I mean, at the beginning, it was hard again to convince Australian players, like, to get some Nifty, right? Who the hell is Nifty, right? He was playing in some team Selfless, and like nobody, like, it was hard to convince people to get, but we managed to do it because the time was like ticking away. We had no time to fuck around anymore, so we had to do something, and then we had to stick with it, right? So we bought Noah from Selfless, and he got there 2 days later. The idea for me was like, okay, we're gonna get him. We're gonna go to boot camp, because Nexa couldn't come to North America because he was waiting for visa, and you know, it was like a whole like process thing. So let's go. Let's go to them, to him, right? So it was like, and the main reason for doing that, not just because getting to Nexa, it was just getting out of the damn house, right?
Right.
Because it was like depressing as hell. So we just want to get out and into a new environment. Just, you know, we got 5 players to just, you know, just practice and get into the game and try to like fix things and work things out and just play the fucking game. And we got there, it was fine. The bootcamp was all right. I mean, the conditions were a bit, you know, iffy, but bootcamp itself, it was fine. Nexa was in-game leading. Noah was like right there. He 48 hours after arrived at the house, he went with us to Serbia. It was like a super interesting thing to see. And getting Noah I think it was a really good move for us, because Noah is a very specific kind of person. And once we got back to the States and we were preparing, that the in-game leading from Nexa was kind of getting, I don't want to say worse, but it was getting like iffy in a way. And we didn't do things right, and people were becoming restless about it, you know. But we decided to stick with it for the IEM Sydney, which was 2016, where we lost to FaZe, Astralis, and then the famous game, I mean, against Chiefs, where we got 15-0 on train, and it was a mess, right? So after that, it was like a dark period for us, like those few days. And then one day Noah came to me, Nifty, and he was like, hey Alex, can I talk to you about something? I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. And he said like he wants to be the in-game leader, right? Okay. And I asked him why, you know. Just give me reasons. And he made more than a few good like arguments about it, and it sounded to me that he was like really willing to do, and not just because he thought like Nexa was doing a bad job or something like that. He wanted to do it. He wanted to be the guy who was like gonna be the in-game leader, who's gonna, you know, lead the team in game, and he was willing to do that, and he made some good points, good arguments. So I said yes. I mean, why not? So we started like with him as an in-game leader, and Nexa was a back at his like player kind of role, and this was a bumpy ride, you know, and because he was new to it, he made mistakes. I mean, I tried to make it easy for him as much as I could, but he was really like developing really good. He was working a lot, you know, every day. He wasn't stopping, and his work ethics were really, really, really good, and he was developing in the right way. We had a good thing going on in game, right? We were like, he was listening to me, and he was doing everything that I said, and I listened to him, and we had a really good relationship in game about that, and things looked better. You know, we won that minor, the first one, because I think they'd
never won a minor before, mate.
Yeah, we won that first minor, and then after that, I don't know what we played. Few events. We didn't qualify for Pro League finals. That's I don't want to talk about that, but we played decent CS, right? But still, it wasn't the level that we wanted to play, obviously.
What about this then? Since you brought up the minor, that was like a piece of trivia that a lot of people didn't know, because as much as everyone used to be like kind of dismissive of the Asia minor one and be like, oh, that's just like a free ride for Renegades to the major every time. Like it was, but they never used to win it because the Tyloo team used to win them all, and then the Mongols won the one, you know. So it was, as weird as it sounds, it seems like it was a big deal for them to actually be able to win the minor, you know, because it's not like some of the Tyloo teams were decent, you know, but like if you lose to them over and over again, it's always in the final you lose to them. That says something about like mentality, right?
Exactly. Like, I mean, once you lose once, it's kind of, okay, I lost. Twice, you just begin to wonder, and then after 3 times, it gets into your head, right? And you kind of get a mental like blockage, right? And then you don't know what to do, and then you end up losing. So we brought 2 new players. I was there, and it was like whole new environment. I think we had a bumpy ride on that minor as well against Team Signature or something. It was like wow, that was a game. We lost the first map. It was like, I think they just beat us. I mean, they were just better on that map. I don't know how, or I don't even know a single player from that team, and they were just better. But we had like a between those two, that was a funny thing. Between those 2 maps, first and the second, when we lost the first, and we had a long, like 20-minute talk, like a really vocal talk in a way, and then we just turned it around and won the whole thing, and that's where we started winning all those minors. So I think that was like a turning point. I think that was 20 minutes. That map right there was a turning point where we started playing good on the minors, right? But still, like I said, it wasn't really like the level that we wanted to play. We still had like things that we needed to do better in a way. Okay. And Nexa was I don't know. He wasn't really. He's a good player, right? And he can do stuff, and he's a solid player. But I think the North America got him in a way, and he couldn't really like adjust in the way of living there. And he was like super young, and I blame myself for not like making easier for him in a way. So he really he didn't fit in well. And we had after DreamHack Atlanta where we lost to Envy, I think, in the semis.
Yes. Yeah.
In the semis, yeah. That was like the last chance kind of for Nexa, but he didn't do as we expected, so we had to bench him, and then we went to a break, and then another hell was happening during that break. And after that, it was like peaceful when we got enough, but we can talk about that later.
Okay, so what about this then? So as you alluded to there when you were talking about like having to change the mentality when they're at the minors, etc. As a team, that's one of the things where when I used to talk to Sponge when he was the in-game leader, and then whenever I saw that team at events, one of the things that people who are fans might not understand is because on camera, those guys always seem like super chilled out, like really nice guys, you know. Like, they did seem like a team that lacked a bit of, like, fire, you know. Like, I heard one of the problems they had. It's a very weird problem. I've never heard of this in a team before. Normally, the problem is too many people are fighting and, like, I hate you and stuff. It sounded, apparently, they had the opposite problem where when they were in the team house, it's just like no one would talk. People were just, like, silent.
Exactly.
It would just...
Yeah.
So... This must have been an unusual environment for you, right? I mean, from what I know of people who are Serbians, they're pretty, like, vocal about what they want, you know, and if you're fucking up, you're not doing your job, you tell the guy, you know, and so... Did you have to do something to change kind of the way people operated or the way they communicated?
Yeah, I mean, it was like exactly like you said. People are super quiet. Like I said, there are too many different personalities right there, and we lacked a bit of fire in a way. I mean, Aaron, he was the kind of the guy who was like always like fired up and everything. But other people were kind of quiet, which is not a bad thing. But you cannot be too quiet, right? And in the house, they never argued. There was never like super like heated some crazy arguments in the house, like people, it wasn't like that. But like I said, those people every single one of those players is a really good player in his role. Like if you take them separately, you have JKS, Justin, he's a super defensive player who can put him in C9 and he's going to do great, right?
That was the joke. When Sponge actually had just left the team is when I made that video where I basically explained that if you took all of them and you put them on different NA teams, like it makes sense, you could put Ostillo on this team and you could put Azar on this team. It made sense. That's why it didn't make sense that together they couldn't do it, right?
It makes perfect sense, right? Because this is where the environment, the gaming house comes into play. My whole idea back at near the end, before I decided actually to leave, it was like, I had an idea and I talked with the team and with an org, like moving players from the gaming house into like separate units, two each, with the people that are getting along together in a way that they're just put them together in a house and just, if we are the big event, we can boot camp or some we can do that stuff. But I think that would help that team a lot, because once you look at them, you have a budget MIBR kind of core, because in my opinion, MIBR and SK, whatever, they had the best core that CSGO has ever seen.
Sure.
You have Fallen, right, who is an OPER, in-game leader, super smart guy, and then you have coldzera, who is a defensive kind of player, just the guy who knows what to do in every single moment. Yep. Defensive, super like a turret, just killing everyone.
Yeah.
And then you have Fur, right, who is super aggressive, who is like super skilled, confident, guy who just goes in and just kills everybody, right? Yes. And that's the core that is a dream, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's the best core that CSGO has ever seen, and I think that's gonna stay that way. Anyway, we had the kind of that's the way I like to think about it. We had a budget kind of core there. Okay. There was Justin, right, who is defensive player again, who is the guy who knows what to do in many situations, who works a lot, who is like confident and who is like calm in situations. And then you have Noah Nifty, who is OPER and in-game leader, and he's a pretty good OPER, right? And he's developing as an in-game leader really fast.
Okay.
And then you have Azar, right, who is for a type of player, right? He's aggressive. He wants to go for the skills. He understands the game. Yeah, I think of all the players that I was working with there, he had the most like awareness and the game sense and kind of skill of all players. He has different issues, but this one's like he's really good at those stuff. But we had that core, and plus we had Justillo, who is like a soldier type of player,
Right.
He's gonna do what you say, and he's gonna go with his head through the wall if that's necessary. That's kind of player that he is, and his aim is super good, and he's like a super good teammate as well. But he has that shitty role that nobody wants. But he was doing it really well lately, I guess. And we had that going on, but we were lacking a fifth player. We were lacking a guy who is gonna get stuff done in a way. And I stopped my story during that break, right? During the summer break when we moved next, and that was like a weird period. That was a player break, but I wasn't on a break. Let me tell you that.
Because you were hunting for players.
Yeah, I was hunting, but the thing with an org, it was really hard to convince them to buy somebody,
Right.
Just buy me a player, please, Well,
that's actually the biggest problem for people who are fans who don't realize is that, people now know because in 2018 we had big teams like MIBR try to get players, and even they couldn't get some, like some of the lesser names. But people didn't know this because every player in the world had these buyouts and everyone was on like 2-year contracts. It meant the biggest problem if you're in like Renegades is, well, obviously you can't buy NiKo, so you can't buy like the proven player because it's easy to go to your org and go, listen, if you buy this guy, he's the best player in the world and we'll win. But the problem is if you go into them and saying, if you buy this guy, he's never done anything on LAN, and I don't even actually know myself if he's going to be that good, but it's 50k. Can I have the 50k? They're going to be like, sorry, no. Unsurprisingly,
Yeah. So after that break, we got like that Swedish dude JZ Walkings, right?
Yes. The
David,
infamous
DreamHack
tournament of JZ Walkings.
David is an awesome guy. I mean, when we talked to him, me and the manager, who really, by the way, I forgot to mention this, Chris, like Gomez, and he helped a lot. He helped me a lot throughout the darkness of the team during those months. And without him, like it would be really even more difficult in that way. So we talked with David, and we explained to him, listen, David, we're probably gonna get you just temporarily. I don't know, like we don't know how long he's gonna, because the time was ticking. We had to fly back to NA. It was like,
sure.
We had like 5 days of practice, and then we go back to Sweden and just play the DreamHack. What was it, Malmo, right?
Yes.
And we explained to him, like, listen, we're gonna just give you this like opportunity in a way, but it's probably going to be like temporarily. I don't know if it's going to be a 1 month, maybe a 6 months, or and he understood it that way. We asked him, like, you are an opera, and he said, like, I can do this and this and that, and then we said, yeah, fine, whatever, and we took him in, right? And we played that event. During that event, the org finally bought NAF, right? And
right, okay.
Yeah, and so we sat down as a team. I remember even that night, sat down with him, with David, JZ Walk. He just told him, listen, we got a better opportunity to get NAF. We had to take that because we think that he's going to fit well with the team, and you know how that goes. And he understood it. He understood it completely. And that was the episode with David, with JZ Walkings. But once NAF came in, that was a whole different story with our game and our team and everything. Like,
well, here's the thing. Obviously, as a player, like when he was in the Optic team, the same one you were referring to before that had NiKo and had Tarek. Basically, if everyone remembers, it was just when Stanislaw left, they kept the same 4 players that had done really well. And their problem was they kept cycling players, trying to find an in-game leader and trying to fix the team. And it never happened, obviously. Like, they didn't really have many good results at all. And so eventually, everyone knows the other players went to Cloud9, broke up, etc. But in the case of NAF, when he went to your team, that was kind of a move out of left field. But everyone's like, what? He went to Renegades. So when he joined your team, like, did he even know any of the players? What was your expectation of him coming in as a player?
No, I don't think he knew anybody from the team. And once he got there, I mean, we didn't know what to do with him at the beginning, in a way. I mean, we knew what kind of player he is, what kind of role he's the best at. And once we got there, he said, like, okay, just put me wherever you want, and I will just fill any spot. We just asked him, what do you want to do? How do you want to, just exchanging like opinions about the game, right? And he told us, like, okay, you can put me anywhere you want. I can play anything, right? And we started like that. We just gave him some spots, but it changed in a way. It changed in a better way because he was we were giving him more freedom and more and more and more, and to the point that he could do whatever he wants in the team, like in the game. And the thing with that, I don't really like doing that, but he was getting the job done every single time. He was just delivering on everything. He can be the player that can bait you, but he's gonna get the things done. He's gonna kill 3, 4. He's gonna clutch the round. He's gonna, and it was allowed for him to do that. He was doing it well, and we were playing really good CS at the time. I remember us winning the IE, that Star Leather, Shanghai, whatever.
Yes. Then
we played the finals of the iBuy Masters against Cloud9, who later won the major, and we won the minor, and then we played good at IEM Oakland and a few more events like Denver, DreamHack Denver, whatever. And we played really good CS, and we felt really like confident in our game. It was like really, really good. And whatever we did, it worked. And I think we were like, if we continued like that at that time, I think we would climb to like top 10, top 5 at some point, because we were really in the game. We were really like playing really, really good. And then, like I said, everything that we did worked. So, I mean, we played those events really good. Then the player break came, and then, stuff happened. Keith left, and then the problem started again.
Okay, what about this then? So as you said, you had that famous Star Ladder iLeague Invitational number 2, the one that was in China. Now, the context of this one It's funny because like Virtus.pro basically did you a really good favor by having that amazing run at Epicenter right before where they almost won. So everyone's like, Virtus.pro's back. So then when you beat them, it was like you get extra props for that. Because it looks like, oh, it's the real Virtus.pro. It's not like the one that was bad, you know. Obviously, in the context of the interview earlier where they were the guys who beat you back when you were in mousesports, it was a big deal still to beat Virtus.pro and win a tournament, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even they beat us in the group stage of that event, and then we come back to the final and we beat them. So it was a huge victory for us because that was the first event for Renegades, like outside, you know, the international event they won. You know, I'm not counting them, the minors.
Sure.
It was just a big thing for us, you know, and beating BP in the finals wasn't just that extra thing, you know. So it felt really, really good back then.
When you say about NAF, like I notice, it's the same when I talk to Nifty. And in fact, everyone I've talked to from Renegades about NAF, it's a similar story. It's like on the one hand, they always compliment his skills and they say like, listen, you can't, you know, he was obviously fragging out of his mind. He was really good. But it does sound like, and this is something that I've heard from other teammates of his in past teams before Team Liquid. I can't comment on Team Liquid because he's in the squad now, so who knows. But it sounds as though he has an upside in terms of his skills and he can do his job, but maybe not as great a teammate though, like not as great at like working with other players as much. Is that accurate at all?
Yeah, I mean, he's the type of person that you just need to leave be, you know, just let him do his thing. Do not like try to antagonize him or something, like don't get into an argument with him and he's going to be fine. And I mean, he can still work on his like being a better teammate in a way, right? He's not a bad teammate by any means. But he can work on that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Okay. When you came to the major, A-League Boston, this was one where, like, if you go and look at the results here, it's like, okay, so you beat Envious and Sprout. Yeah, okay, not that great teams. You lost to Team Liquid, who was a pretty good team at the time. You lost to mousesports, obviously, we know was a very good team. The one that stands out, obviously, is Vega Squadron. You lost to Vega Squadron. What would you say about this game? Because Vega Squadron's a team where, listen, they got phased in that tournament. You know, they were a team that was upsetting squads, and even though everyone wanted to think, they're not going to do anything, there was something about them was unusual, right? So what's tough about Vega Squadron to play at that time?
Because they just run around, man. They just run around doing random things, and just it's working for them. They're catching people on surprise, you know, and they surprise people, and it's like really hard to play against them. But I remember that game because we had them, you know, we had the perfect game plan. We had the perfect counter to that stuff that they're doing because I studied them a lot before that game. And I knew exactly how they're going to play. We knew exactly what are they going to do in certain rounds, but we made mistakes on some key rounds. I remember it was Mirage. And we made some key mistakes, like we were stacked on the site and they just came and nobody like the coordination between the players wasn't really good at those rounds and we just ended up losing them, and there was the key rounds like a reset or something like that, and they just won. I mean, it wasn't anything mental in a way, like there wasn't any like, you know, any pressure. Nobody felt pressure, nobody felt anything like that. It was just the mistakes in the game that cost us there.
Okay. So in early next year, like a month or so after the major, a few weeks after the major, was when NAF left and he went to join Team Liquid. Like, understandable, you know, NA team. Obviously, they were very good at the time. He got a really good offer. Was it depressing at all when like the best performing player leaves your team?
Yeah, it wasn't easy, but we understand the decision that he made. He was completely honest with us from day one, and that's why I had a huge respect for NAF.
Okay.
I think he's one of the best NA players, probably top 3 right now, like the North American ones.
Sure.
And he was like completely honest with us. He told us that he is leaving and why he's leaving and where he's leaving and whatever. And I understand him. Everybody understood completely. And he got a better offer. I mean, Liquid was a better team when you look at it. And we understand, like, so when he left, it was really difficult period for us because the season just started, right? And there are tournaments to be played. The Pro League is starting, and once again, another year, another thing that is the same. You know, we are missing a player. We just thought that we got like a good lineup and everything was like going well for us. We lost our best, like you said, best performing player in a way, and we were in the same hell again. So we try again. I mean, it was like a deja vu kind of thing, where we're talking about the players, and again the same thing. We're discussing about talents, and everybody's like, no, not him. No, he's not good. Who is that guy? And then the European, nobody, like, again, the contracts, the buyouts, the potential players. So again, I was forced to improvise, right? And I was supposed to find a player that is a free agent that is willing to come in like 48 hours kind of thing, a week, whatever. I don't know. We played, we qualified for Star Ladder and for IEM Katowice with Nav, and then he left, and then we had to find the new player. So I was kind of like, I had a deadline, so I didn't know what to do. We were just talking about this player, that player, and then Jakim came to mind. Okay, he was a good player, like in one period of time, right? Surely he can do stuff, right? Let's talk to him. Let's see what he has to say. How is he feeling about the game? Because he was in where was he? What team was it? Dignitas or something?
Yeah, he'd been in one of those squads where it used to be Dignitas, and then they with
Rubino and Croman, Fox, so I got to talking to him, and me and again the manager Chris. So, and he was super interested. We made a deal like really fast, and he got there, and he was a part of the team really fast in a way, because his personality is like, he's a fun to be around, he's a good teammate. And I mean, he has, like every player, me, you, whatever, he has his issues, but he's a really good teammate. And he didn't really play the role that we wanted him to play, but we kind of worked around it, and he fitted in the team really good. So the chemistry was fine. The atmosphere in the team was like, the morale was, again, it was good. Everybody accepted him really well, and he was like, getting used to America really fast and adapting really fast, and it suited him in a way. The house was like cheered up again in a way,
Okay.
And we started practicing, and then we went to Star Ladder, where we played. At the start we played bad, but then we something turned around and we played really good CS. IEM Katowice was kind of decent for us, and then we played decent CS. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't like it was with Keith, because we lost the secondary op. Keith was really doing a good job back then in that role, especially on a map like Cobble, because I remember our Cobble was like super good with Keith. I remember us destroying, who did we destroy? G2 back then on that map. It was like 16-5. 16-5, 16-6. It was like IEM Oakland, where we just ran over them on Cobble. And one of the big reasons why we were so good on Cobble is because we had the right people on the right spots doing a good job. Like Keith was a secondary op on B, and he was just like locking that stuff down. The same goes for Train, and then we played really, really good. But once he left, we lost that, because Jakim is not an oper, right? So once you get used to playing in a certain way, with double op, and just get the routine done, and everything was going well, and then you suddenly lose the really important part. It's very hard to find a solution in a short period of time. You need to understand how to fit a new player in, how to change your game completely from the one that it was before, in order to get the same results, which wasn't easy by any means. So, for example, it was good for us that Cobble was expelled from the
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, we tried everything with Jakim. We put him in different roles. We swapped spots on the maps, and it was going all right, I think. But yeah, that was a decent period, I guess.
When you brought Jakim in, as you say, he was someone where everyone remembers when he was really good, and then I actually heard that I even heard this from him and some of his teammates, that's actually part of what his problem basically was, that when he came into that G2 team a long time ago, the one that became FaZe basically, supposedly when he joined, it was with the logic of he's going to just be a supportive player, but because he went mental in the first tournament, that major, and was so good and was killing everyone, it made people think, no, he's supposed to be a star player. And then if you remember, the problem with that FaZe team was, because since Dennis left right afterwards, they had nobody who had any history of leadership, so it was just people Spain was taking a turn, and before they got Carrigan, they didn't have a proper in-game leader. And one of the problems if you don't have a leader and etc. is you're not going to have proper roles, and you're going to have players. And it sounds like he was one of them where they themselves don't really know what role they should play, and so they might end up in a role that they think they can do, but it just doesn't fit them, So when he was saying you brought him in and you had to like figure out a new role, what was the concept of like what you wanted him to do?
Yeah, it's exactly like you said. Once you have the change in leadership and everything, like people, like players lose their identity as players, and it's really difficult for them to kind of find themselves again. But with Jacob, we couldn't really like give him what he wanted. It was like we tried to organize and he was like filling the spot that was left, And yeah, it wasn't ideal, but it had to be that way. And he adapted really fast. So I think it was I don't know. It wasn't perfect, but it was fine, I guess.
Okay. So when you went to this Star Series tournament, like this was the one, as you say, because it was just after you got Jacob, where people started to see like, oh, right, Renegades isn't dead just because Naf's left. Actually, they're doing pretty decently. If you remember, you beat the Fnatic team, who obviously right afterwards became pretty good and won at Katowice. It was the exact same lineup. People forget. Then you had you played against FaZe, who at the time was the number one team, and actually gave them like a decent enough run. Right. One thing I noticed about this point in time, which also made me think like, oh, there's actually something to Renegades. They weren't just like Naf carrying, hard carrying, and maybe you can win the. It's not like it was like NiKo mousesports scenario, because one thing that I noticed that was different is usually in Counter-Strike, I often tell like people who are fans of other games and they just watch a little bit, like don't make the mistake of a lot of like casual fans of thinking that if someone's not good on a map, they just don't practice the map. Because in reality, the real problem is, it's not like you just have to practice train. You have to be good enough on train to beat the best teams in the world if you're going to play them on train. That's the real problem. Is to have a deep map pool is usually just means you have to be a very good team. So one of the things I noticed about Renegades was usually a team at that kind of ranking has a very small map pool. They'll have like 2 or 3 maps, and then they have to usually to have a chance get their favorite map, and they have to try and avoid a specific map, otherwise it's going to be a really tough series. But I noticed in your team that first of all, not only did you actually have a fairly wide map pool, like you would actually flex it against people, like you would change the ban based on the opponent, and then you would change the pick based on the opponent. And this is actually usually a sign of one of the top teams, like or a team hopefully who is well coached. So was this something that you had in mind, that the team has to be able to move around the map pool and change up what we're doing depending on the opponent?
Yeah, definitely, because you cannot always linger around 3 maps. It's just not going to work at the end of the day. So we worked a lot on our maps together, because exactly like you said, we were like changing the picks and the bans depending who we play. Because, I mean, we had a problem, for example, with Overpass, and I tried like 3 or 4 times during like this year and a half to like get the overpass going, but we couldn't really do it. But the other maps, even Nuke was like, we tried Nuke, we played Nuke, and I remember on that Starladder we beat Hellraisers. That was a gamble pick, but it worked.
Okay. And then you tried to pretend to FaZe, like, oh, we might pick it, but they didn't
actually believe, if it was my call, if it was my call, I would have like pick it and just like, but it was like a team decision, and
sure.
I always try to like have people talking, and then we had like theory sessions before every practice, and we just talk about every map, and we just every day we were improving on anything like every other map. So we had a pretty wide map pool. It wasn't ideal, and the maps weren't perfect at all, but we had a decent map pool back then, especially when Cobble was back in, and people have like ban Cobble every single time against us, which leaves us opportunity to pick or do whatever we want. So
okay. So obviously one of the tournament runs that everyone remembers was the IEM Sydney one, and particularly because, I mean, most people just remember basically the nifty game where he went crazy and had like the 50 kills against mousesports. But what people forget, no one ever remembers this, is like, first of all, you actually lost the mousesports series. Everyone remembers as though you won because it was such an amazing game. But the one that everyone forgets, Kassad, is beating FaZe Clan on LAN.
Yeah.
The team that won the tournament, yeah.
In a best of 3. I mean, that was
pretty good.
It was like, I mean, we were in a shock when we won that. It wasn't really like we didn't realize what we did, like beating that phase in a best of 3 is not easy, and we just it was just like amazing for us. We just kept, and we fell into that shock. And then we lost to Tyloo like pretty easily the next game. So I don't know. That was a really good tournament, and had some really nice memories there. It's still bad that we didn't won that game against Mouz.
Sure.
We had a chance to win that.
It was close, yeah.
Multiple times we had a chance to win that. We had some rounds that we should have won, including the last one on 15-14. Just didn't happen. I mean, that's CS, I guess.
When you were talking earlier, and you said like when you played like, you know, the very good Virtus Pro, like impossible to read, like you don't know what they're going to do, especially because some of the players themselves obviously don't know what they're going to do. They're going to like what Snax was doing was just genius, you know, he's just doing something in the moment. When you play against this FaZe clan, I mean, this wasn't the one with Olaf, this is when they had Exist, because if people remember, this was the tournament they actually came back and won the whole event, right? When you play against a team like FaZe clan, how much are they running, like some set stuff? Like how much can you scout them? Like what's kind of the mentality of trying to play against them?
Not much, because like they're not really like doing a lot of set stuff, because I don't think they have a lot of set stuff, because they're relying on individual plays a lot. But it wasn't really hard. Like for example, Virtus Pro, right? It wasn't really hard like to read them on our CT side, you know? So we had I think I can't remember the exact scores on the maps, but I don't want to say easy, but it was like easier than like, for example, VP to read that phase. And then we were playing in front of the home, like in the home soil, people were extra motivated and they played really good. And I mean, a lot of things like matched so we can win that game.
Okay. What do you think overall held that team back from being a better squad? Because as we mentioned, you know, there were some playoff performances, there were some bit upsets over bigger name teams. The team even worked after NAF left. He reformulated it, you know, it's still a quality team. What were the things that held it back from really going to the next level and becoming like, you know, at the level of say the mousesports of the world, the Fanatics, the teams that they were just below the phases and Astralis of the world? What was holding them back?
I think we didn't. One of the reasons that we didn't have enough time to like do stuff, because every day is something new. You're chasing something like some other qualifier, you know, some other tournament, some other pro league match or something. It doesn't leave you enough time to practice and like practice the stuff that you're doing good and then fix the bad stuff, right? And just get the good things that become better. You don't have time to do that. You just keep playing and playing and playing and playing, and there is not much time to like look at your game and analyze your game properly and just like get to the next level. That's one of the reasons, surely. So then, another one that is the gaming house that I hated. I mean, yeah.
So as you mentioned, the situation of you leaving the team, and you said you chose to leave. Why did you end up parting ways with Renegades? I mean, even though you've said, you know, there was some up and down results, generally it seemed like one of the successful portions of your coaching career.
Yeah. I mean, the reason why I left is everybody like who knows me knows that I'm a really like a super passionate person when it comes to CS. I can go on a single day without watching CS or talk about CS or whatever. There is not a single day for sure for the last 15 years. And the thing that we did wrong and that what got to me and what made me leave is because like every other team, we were like too focused on our mistakes in a way, you know, on our failures. And in my opinion, that's not how you're supposed to do things. And once you're like talk about failures and bad stuff, you become like intoxicated in a way, right? And then you try to breed more failures in a way. And then once that happens, you start. What happens in the teams? It creates a bad relationship with the players. People start talking about the other people's limitations, finding flaws and limitations in them, and then it leads to like I said, broken relationships, and it leads to like unnecessary roster changes, and like it all goes to shit. I just don't think teams should be focused too much on their mistakes. I'm not saying we should like completely be in denial about that or something like that. It needs to be done in a certain way where people understand what is a constructive criticism, and like, you know, because it works both ways the way I see it. Once you become obsessed with the things that you are doing good, you're gonna like breed more good things, and then you're gonna do more things good, and then you should focus on your things that you are doing well. Like, I don't know, for example, you are maybe not the default based kind of team, maybe you are execution kind of team, you know, and maybe you are better in contact plays, maybe you're better in strats, maybe you're not so good in rotation, in transitions, in like reactions, in default, in reactions, whatever. Maybe you're not good in that. Nobody's saying that you should not be talking about that, but maybe you should like focus your game on the things that you are doing well, on the weapons that you have. Maybe you should use them better instead of just constantly like talking about like things that are not working for you, because at the end of the day it's not how it should be done. And I felt, I mean, I'm not blaming players for that. I'm mostly blaming myself in a way, because I didn't push for the things that I wanted to do more. And I felt in the end that the team needed something fresh, something new, a new look, and I couldn't really help in that way anymore. And instead of just dragging that stuff around, I just decided after Pro League finals that I'm just gonna leave the team. So that happened.
So how did you come to be with Valiance then? This team where obviously it's other Serbians and it's like back in the home region. How was this the team you ended up joining up with?
I mean, it was like when I got back home, I got a few offers, international offers, but I wasn't really feeling it. The project that I was offered wasn't really, I don't know, I didn't see the potential in it in a way. I didn't see the drive, didn't see like, I don't know. And I signed a 6 months contract with my home team because I see some potential there in some players, and I think they can develop really good. I mean, I'm going to stick with them till the end of the year. After that, I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe I'm going to stay or not. But those players in Serbia, there is a lot of potential in some players. You know, NiKo's cousin, for example, he used to be, this is a funny story, they used to play 1.6 together. And they were like, I remember them, they were like kids, like 10-year-old kids just running around, you know. And the NiKo's cousin was a more talented player than NiKo in a way, but he stopped playing and he wasn't interested in that. And then, I mean, NiKo became who he is. But there is what I'm trying to say. There is a lot of in the region. Like take Cirque, right? Who is playing in NRG, who is like playing really good. In our region, there is a lot of potential, a lot of talent, but there is not enough people who can teach them how to play in a way, who can teach them the basics, the stuff that they need to learn before they go to the next level in a way. And the mentality is obviously an issue, especially in like Balkans, right? Everybody is so fired up and everybody is like, the temper is like, you know, fiery in a way. Sure. And a lot of problems, but the potential is there. So I came back for like one period of time to try to make something work there, to see what it's like. I don't know about the future. To be honest, I didn't mind North America at all. Okay. I like the living. I like the whole like situation there. You know, it suited me, and I adapted really fast right there.
So since you, as you mentioned, since they've got Hunter, NiKo's cousin in the team, that's actually one of the ways this team got known, because it used to be like a thing where every now and then, every few months, he'd have some like online game where he like dropped some insane numbers, and then everyone would always be like, look, NiKo's cousin's doing the same shit. It's like, because obviously like famously that's what always used to be the kind of NiKo box score when he was in like mousesports, be like you plus 20, then the next person's like -5 or something. Are you trying to use this guy like NiKo?
Yeah,
Is
exactly.
he supposed to be like the star player?
Yeah, he's a different type of a player. He's more like a defensive, you know, kind of thing. While NiKo is just, you know, how NiKo likes to play. But Hunter is like a more defensive type of player, but he's delivering a lot, like with a lot of things, and he has a sense for the game similar as NiKo. Not on that level yet, but he understands the game in a really good way. And our whole team, including Janko and NiKo and me and now Hunter and the other players that are now, we have a thing like a family kind of thing between each other, you know, and that helps us a lot, you know, because we can talk about anything, we can just deal with anything together. So it has always been a very important factor in developing all these players, because everybody that we took him as we made him a part of that like family kind of thing. You know, it's not on a high level or anything like that, but it's still like it's still important for us.
Okay. So as you alluded to earlier, I mean, two of the players in this team played with you in the past. You've got Emmy and you've got Letny. Now, who are these guys? If anyone hasn't seen them play, what are they like as players? What kind of role are they playing in the team?
Letny is personally, he's one of my best friends outside of the game, but as a player, he's like a guy who will do whatever it takes, and he understands the game a lot. But he is still trying to he's still learning in a way, you know. He still doesn't understand some things that are important, but he's developing it really fast, and he's working really hard. I think him and Hunter are really super hard working players, you know, and it's really I don't know how to explain it. You can see that you can clearly, when you spend time with them, you play with them, you can clearly see the potential, right? And you know, if they continue to work like that, they're going to end up in a decent team, or they're going to succeed with this team, you know. The other player is Zemi, and we put him in a role of an entry, you know, because his aim is really he's really sharp when he's feeling it, but he has a problem in his mind. He overthinks things, you know. When we're practicing against somebody who is in top 5, some super good team or whatever, he's overthinking things, and he has a tendency to confuse other people because he's saying, oh, maybe they will do this, maybe we should do that, they will maybe do that. And he's I'm just shut up, dude, just play, just come on, you know. So we put him in a specific role with his entry to use his aim, and he's just doing that right now. We're still adapting him to this role and just explaining what he needs to do, and it's fun. Let's say it like that.
And what about the other two players then, Impulse and Jazar? These are people where they haven't got the same name value, you know, people don't know them as well. So who are these guys?
Well, Jazar is he played in Fnatic Academy, right? With
Yes.
with Golden and the other guys, and we took him in because we tried him out a few times, and it felt that he's fitting in with us personality-wise. In game and role is not really ideal because he is primarily an AWPer, but I mean he was primarily that he switched when he played with Pronax and I don't know who else, Michaelele and all those guys, and he kind of was between the roles, and I think he lost his identity there because he was just switching roles. But we are trying to fit him in right now as in that kind of semi-support kind of thing. It's going rough right now. I'm gonna be completely honest. But we are working every day. I mean, we'll see what's gonna happen. And the Impulse, he's an AWPer, and he's really young and unexperienced guy. I mean, he can hit shots. That's no question. But he has a tendency to miss situations on the map. He's not aware of some situations on the map, and with him, we are working on that as much as we can, but I don't know. I mean, we'll see in the future what's going to happen. I don't know.
Right, I have a question that could potentially be a tiny bit controversial, but if it is at all, just let me know. But I don't want it to be. It's not supposed to be a mean question. It's a genuine question I'm curious about, right?
Yeah, go.
So, in theory, in this region, obviously, the great thing is, it's kind of okay, I'll give you the example. So even if there's a bunch of countries in Eastern Europe that don't want to be in a new Soviet Union, you know, the people who used to be in the USSR, obviously the upside is they all speak Russian. So if you do come from Ukraine, Belarus, Kazakhstan, you can play with Russian players because you have the shared language, right?
Yeah.
So you can kind of make use of more talent than just your own country. So in theory, you could have Croatian players in this team.
Yeah, but there are none.
That's the question I have. Okay, so I noticed there isn't any Croatian players, and whenever I looked at any of these lineups, I can never see any Croatian players. But in theory, they can speak Serbian. Now, I know there is obviously some tension between some of the countries, and the history isn't great. But, you know, I mean, you've got Bosnian players here. Is there a reason why there aren't Croatian talents or there aren't players in these teams?
I just don't think their community is very well developed in a way. You know, there are just no players there. I mean, there are a few guys, but nothing too serious. I never really looked into them that much.
Are they a bit isolated from the Serbian scene?
No, not at all. I mean, the Balkan scene is a pretty like unique in a way. They all play with each other, you know.
Okay.
They all socialize. I mean, there are not many Croatian players, but they're also Macedonian, Bosnian, Serbian, Croatian, even Bulgarian players. Like, they all socialize. They all play together. But
okay.
especially for Croatia, I don't know what their problem is, but I guess, I mean, general problem in Serbia and Croatia is there is not a lot of events. There are none. Maybe one or two, two. That's it.
Was it more back in the day if you were playing 1.6 or early CS:GO? Were there more lands back then?
Oh yeah, definitely. In 1.6 there was a tournament every 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Every 2-3 weeks in different city, maybe in different country like Croatia or something like that, Hungary or whatever, like Balkan region and all those countries around. There was always a tournaments every 2-3 weeks in CS:GO. In the first year, there were like few of them. The next, not so much, and now there are basically none. And that is a huge problem for like young kids, like that are trying to like get their name up and trying to like do this thing. It's a big problem to them because there is no tournaments whatsoever. They cannot come to anything.
Okay. Right, since earlier, as we said, I mean, if people who follow the theme of the interview, you've been a bunch of different places, different teams, Australia, North American teams, all over the place. So we never know in the future where you'll end up. So do this for me. Give people like an overview. What is kassad like as a coach? Like if you actually had everything you wanted, all the control, the types of players you wanted, what type of coach would you ideally be? How do you vision yourself?
The thing is, like, I like to do things in my own way. Like I said, because I know I can get the things done when things are being done my way. Because I have I like to think that I have a pretty high knowledge of the game and I have experience for that. But what am I like? I like to use people's instincts more than like, you know, just place them all over the map and just tell them you go do this and this and this. I like players, because I think a lot of players are talented and they understand the game a lot and their instincts are good. I like to use that a lot because I think that's a winning thing. You know, just try to organize structure, make a structure that's going to work, and use the how can I say it? Do the things that you are good at and use your player's instinct, and you're going to do fine.
Since one thing I notice, okay, and coaches don't get a lot of chance to say this, is but every coach I've ever talked to, there's always players in their team where from the outside, you can't tell that this guy's like a good player, like maybe his stats are bad or his role in the team's a really hard one, you know. And so from the outside, the person will never get the credit, but the coach will be like, no, I love that guy, like he's doing his job, he's doing this, you know. Over your coaching career, can you pick someone out? Who's like the most underrated player you played with? Or you thought this guy was doing his job well, or he was a good player, but he just doesn't get as much like praise, or no one mentions him?
Westerlund, for sure. Because like I said, he's a soldier type of player, you know, and he's like creating so much space for other players, and he's doing his job well. Sometimes he's going to give a rough game, but once you play that role, you have to have bad games, because you're going to run into people that are like super good, and especially in these top teams like Astralis, Space, MIBR, whatever. But I think one of those players is definitely him, and I think he's doing a really good job, and he helped a lot developing Renegades with his role, and I don't think people give him enough credit. And other than that, he's one of the best teammates that I ever had.
Okay.
And I don't know who else. I mean, I can give you an argument for every single player, but first that comes to mind is Westerlund.
Okay. Right, at the end of this interview, do you have like a final message for people or someone you want to thank or say hello to?
Well, not really, to be honest. I mean, I want to thank you because for inviting me to this thing. So other than that, I'm good, I think.
Hvala lepo.
Nema na čemu.
This video was kindly supported by Andreas, Snazore, Westerlund, Dean Tanglis, Gardner Wilson, Landon Thompson, NateDOhDoubleG, Kyla Harris, Travis Greb, James Harding, Daniel Yordanov, VeXii, Robert Baxter, and a special thanks goes out as always to Jerky's Minion. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Would you like to ask me a question in my monthly AMA? Would you fancy a few teasers for what's coming up in my content? How about taking part in an esports discussion with me? Well, put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today at the Patreon link in the description box below.